Ever feel like you're living in a world built on half-truths and whispers? Well, you probably are. Today we're diving into 10 so-called facts we've all believed since childhood, only to discover they're about as real as a unicorn riding a skateboard. Get ready to have your mind blown, your assumptions shattered, and maybe even win a few arguments at your next family dinner. Let's expose these imposters, starting with a classic every parent has fallen for.
Number 1. The sugar high lie, the myth that makes parents crazy. Picture this: a birthday party, a table laden with cake, and your kid, after a single bite, suddenly transforms into a miniature, sugar-fueled tornado, bouncing off the walls with manic energy. Every parent has seen it, right? We've all blamed the sugar. We've all sworn off cupcakes for a week. But what if I told you it's all a giant sugary lie? That's right. The sugar high is about as real as Santa's sleigh. Scientists, those party poopers of fun myths, actually put this to the test. They gave some kids real sugar, others got a placebo, fake sugar. And here's the kicker: neither the kids nor their parents knew who got what. The result? Absolutely nothing. The sugar kids were no more hyper than the no sugar kids. So why do we insist our kids turn into tiny Tasmanian devils after a lollipop? It's all in our heads, folks. When parents thought their kids had sugar, they suddenly became hyper-vigilant, watching for any twitch, any giggle, any sign of that supposed sugar rush. Kid jumps once, blame the sugar. Kid laughs, must be the sugar. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy born from a misunderstanding. This whole chaotic idea actually kicked off in the 1970s when a doctor made a bold claim: food additives were turning our sweet little angels into hyperactive monsters. Parents, desperate for an explanation for their kids' boundless energy, especially at parties, latched onto it like a toddler to a candy bar. But here's the real scoop: a kid bouncing off the walls at a birthday party isn't fueled by glucose. They're fueled by the sheer, unadulterated joy of being at a birthday party. They're excited, surrounded by friends, maybe a little sleep-deprived from all the anticipation. Give those same kids a sugar-free cake, and guess what? They'd be just as wild. So next time you see a kid tearing through the living room, remember, it's probably just childhood, not a sugar rush. Now, let's move on to another brain-bending myth.
Number 2. Your brain isn't slacking off. The 10% myth that Hollywood loves. Prepare to have your mind fully utilized because we're about to tackle one of the most persistent and, frankly, flattering myths out there. The idea that humans only use a measly 10% of their brains. If you believe that, you probably also believe fish only use 10% of the ocean. This myth is so deeply ingrained in our collective consciousness that Hollywood has built entire blockbusters around it. You know, the ones where some ordinary person pops a magic pill and suddenly they're solving quantum physics while simultaneously doing backflips and speaking fluent ancient Sumerian. Well, I hate to burst your cinematic bubble, but your brain isn't just going full throttle. It's practically a Formula One race car, firing on all cylinders, all the time. Scientists, with their fancy scanners and brain mapping technology, can literally watch your brain light up in real time. And guess what they see? Activity, everywhere, all the time. Even when you're blissfully dreaming of flying pigs, your brain is working overtime, controlling your breathing, managing your heartbeat, and probably replaying that embarrassing thing you said in 3rd grade. Think about it. Your brain, this incredible supercomputer, only makes up about 2% of your body weight. But this tiny overachiever demands a whopping 20% of your body's energy. That's like having a miniature, highly demanding space heater that eats up all your electricity. If 90% of your brain was truly just chilling out, doing nothing, evolution, that ruthless efficiency expert, would have ditched it ages ago. Nature doesn't keep useless baggage around. The most compelling proof? What happens when even a tiny, seemingly insignificant part of your brain gets damaged? A small injury, a minor stroke, and suddenly major problems can arise. Speech difficulties, memory loss, motor control issues. If 90% was expendable, why would a tiny dent cause such chaos? This persistent 10% myth likely originated from a well-meaning Harvard researcher back in the 1800s He observed that people weren't living up to their full potential, a philosophical statement about human capability. But somewhere along the line, that profound observation got twisted into the literal, scientifically inaccurate claim that we only use a fraction of our gray matter. So next time someone tries to sell you a magic brain pill, just remember, you're already a genius, operating at 100%. Now, let's talk about falling objects.
Number 3. Pennies from heaven won't kill you. The urban legend of the deadly coin. Imagine this. You're strolling through the concrete jungle, minding your own business, when suddenly, a glint of copper catches your eye. A penny plummeting from the dizzying heights of the Empire State Building. Your heart races. Is this it? Is this how it ends? A tiny coin transformed into a deadly projectile ready to punch a hole clean through your skull? Relax. Take a deep breath. Because that terrifying scenario is pure Hollywood fantasy. A thrilling urban legend that simply refuses to die. While it makes for a great movie scene, in reality, a penny dropped from such a height is about as dangerous as a gentle flick to the forehead. Annoying, perhaps, but certainly not fatal. Here's why. Gravity, bless its heart, does indeed try to make that penny pick up speed. But then, something else kicks in. Something far more powerful than you might imagine. Air resistance. Think of air not as empty space, but as a thick, invisible fluid. As that penny hurtles downwards, it smacks into countless air molecules, creating friction and drag. It starts to tumble, losing its sleek aerodynamic edge. By the time that humble penny has fallen a mere 50 feet, it hits what physicists call its terminal velocity, a maximum speed it can reach due to the balance between gravity and air resistance. For a penny, that speed is a leisurely 25 miles per hour. To put that in perspective, that's slower than your average cyclist pedaling down the street. So getting hit by a penny at that speed, it would feel like someone flicking you on the head. A bit startling, maybe, but definitely not skull-shattering. Now, if you were to drop that same penny in a vacuum, say in the cold, unforgiving void of space, then yes, it would accelerate over 200 miles per hour. But thankfully, we're down here on Earth where our atmosphere acts as a natural safety net. In fact, you're far more likely to get seriously hurt by a falling ballpoint pen. Why? Because those seemingly innocent writing instruments are aerodynamic enough to act like tiny pointed arrows. So next time you're walking past a skyscraper, don't sweat the pennies. Just keep an eye out for rogue office supplies. And speaking of things that strike,
Number 4. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. The shocking truth. It's a saying as old as time, often used to reassure us that bad luck won't repeat itself. Lightning never strikes the same place twice. It sounds comforting, doesn't it? A little poetic even. Well, prepare for a jolt of reality, because this particular piece of folk wisdom is quite literally electrifyingly wrong. In fact, lightning loves to strike the same place twice, and thrice, and 25 times a year if you're the Empire State Building. That iconic New York landmark is basically a giant lightning magnet, getting zapped around 24 times annually. It's not an anomaly, it's a pattern. But if you want a truly shocking example, let me introduce you to Roy Sullivan. This park ranger, bless his cotton socks, was struck by lightning not once, not twice, but 7 different times over his career. They call him the human lightning rod, and he survived every single strike. After the 4th time, his coworkers started giving him a wide berth during storms, which honestly is a pretty reasonable reaction. The truth is, if you're the tallest thing around, say a lone tree in an open field or a very tall building, you're essentially a prime target during a thunderstorm. Lightning, being the path of least resistance seeker that it is, will often hit the most prominent objects repeatedly. And here's another mind bender. Lightning can strike miles away from the actual storm. These are famously known as bolts from the blue because they can literally appear out of a clear sunny sky. You could be enjoying a beautiful day, not a cloud in sight, and suddenly zap, a bolt from nowhere. So, next time you hear that old saying, remember the Empire State Building and Roy Sullivan, and maybe find some shelter. Now, let's talk about some questionable fashion choices. Number 5. Vikings left their horns at home, the opera-inspired fashion faux pas. Close your eyes and picture a Viking. What do you see? A burly warrior, probably with a magnificent beard, and almost certainly a horned helmet, right? It's the quintessential image, etched into our minds by cartoons, movies, and even sports mascots. But here's a brutal truth that might just shatter your historical fantasies. Vikings never, ever wore horned helmets into battle. That's right, this entire iconic image is a complete fabrication, a glorious fashion lie, cooked up not by ancient Norsemen, but by flamboyant theater costume designers in the 1800s. They were busy creating elaborate outfits for opera performances, and apparently they thought horns looked incredibly dramatic. And just like that, they accidentally birthed one of history's biggest and most enduring fashion myths. Think about it for a second. Going into a chaotic, brutal battle wearing something that gives your enemy two perfect handles to grab onto? Or imagine trying to sneak through a dense forest during a raid only to get your magnificent horns snagged on every single tree branch. It's hilariously impractical. The real Viking helmets that archaeologists have painstakingly unearthed were, well, boring. They were plain, functional pieces of protective gear, maybe with a simple nose guard for added safety. Now, to be fair, some horned helmets have been found, but these ancient artifacts, discovered in Denmark, predate the Viking Age by a staggering 3,000 years. These weren't for clashing swords, they were ceremonial, more like an ancient, very pointy crown. It's highly likely that those 19th century opera designers stumbled upon images of these ceremonial helmets and thought, aha, perfect for our fierce Viking warriors. And so, thanks to a bit of artistic license and a misunderstanding of ancient history, millions of people today genuinely believe that Vikings charged into battle looking like mythical beasts. So, next time you see a Viking with horns, remember the opera and the power of a good costume designer to rewrite history. Now, let's move on to something a little hairier. Number 6. Your razor isn't making you hairier. The shaving myth that just won't die. Raise your hand if you've ever heard this one. Shaving makes your hair grow back thicker, darker, and generally more aggressive. It's a classic, right? A tale passed down through generations, often whispered with a knowing nod and a grimace. Well, I'm here to tell you that this widely accepted fact is, to put it mildly, complete and utter nonsense. Think of it this way. When you shave, you're not magically altering your hair follicles or reprogramming your DNA. You're simply giving each hair a tiny, blunt, flat-top haircut. Imagine taking a chainsaw to a tree. The stump that's left behind feels rougher, coarser, and more prominent than the naturally tapered, softer end of a branch. The exact same thing happens with your hair. When that freshly shaven hair starts to grow back, it feels thicker because you're encountering the blunt, cut end first. It's not actually thicker, it just feels that way. It's like trying to pick up a broom by the bristles versus by the handle. One feels much more substantial. Scientists who have been diligently studying this for decades, yes, they actually study shaving, have consistently found that it has absolutely zero effect on your hair growth. Your hair's natural thickness, its color, and its growth rate are all predetermined by your genes. That humble razor isn't some magical genetic modifier. If shaving truly made hair grow thicker, every balding person on the planet would be furiously shaving their head daily, hoping for a miraculous regrowth. We'd have stumbled upon the cure for baldness in a can of shaving cream. And yet, Jeff Bezos, despite having enough money to buy every expensive razor known to humankind, is still, well, bald. The myth persists because the stubble feels so convincing when it emerges. It's a sensory illusion. It's the old same hair, just presenting a blunter, more noticeable end. So, next time you pick up that razor, rest assured you're not turning into a werewolf.
you're just getting a haircut. Now, let's dive into another piece of parental wisdom that might surprise you.
Number 7. Swim whenever you want. The post-meal pool panic. How many of you heard this growing up? Don't you dare go swimming for 30 minutes after you eat or you'll get cramps and drown. It was practically a commandment in every household. A warning delivered with such gravity that it conjured images of immediate watery doom. This myth is so deeply ingrained that even lifeguards used to enforce it with stern faces and whistle blasts. But here's the splash of truth. There is absolutely zero, zip, nada evidence that swimming after eating is dangerous. Not a single documented case exists of someone actually drowning because they dared to take a dip after a sandwich. The theory behind this parental decree was that after a meal, all your blood rushes to your stomach to help with digestion, leaving your arms and legs starved for oxygen, thus causing debilitating cramps. Sounds plausible, right? Except our bodies are far more capable than we give them credit for. Your circulatory system is a marvel of engineering, perfectly capable of handling both digestion and physical activity simultaneously. You might get a minor cramp if you decide to do an Olympic-level sprint right after devouring a Thanksgiving feast, but that's no different than running intensely after a huge meal. It's discomfort, not a death sentence. The American Red Cross, the authority on water safety, has officially debunked this myth. In fact, competitive swimmers often eat small, easily digestible snacks during their training sessions to keep their energy up. So unless you're planning to gorge yourself on an entire pizza and then immediately attempt to break a world record in the butterfly stroke, you're probably fine. Feel free to cannonball into that pool whenever the mood strikes. Just maybe don't do it on a full stomach if you're aiming for peak performance. Now, let's talk about where your body heat really goes.
Number 8. Your head isn't a heat chimney. The hat myth that leaves you cold. Put on a hat, you'll freeze to death. You lose 50% of your body heat through your head. Sound familiar? It's another classic parental warning delivered with the urgency of a 5-alarm fire. And while wearing a hat in cold weather is certainly a good idea, the idea that your head is some kind of heat-leaking chimney responsible for half your body's thermal output is wildly exaggerated. This myth, like many good ones, has a kernel of truth twisted into a giant misconception. It apparently originated from an old US Army survival manual. In their test, they dressed soldiers in full winter gear, thick coats, gloves, boots, but left their heads exposed. And surprise, surprise, most of the heat escaped through their heads. Why? Because it was the only part of their body that wasn't covered. It's like saying you lose 100% of your heat through your nose if that's the only part sticking out of a snowdrift. The reality is far less dramatic. Your head makes up about 7 to 10% of your body's total surface area. Therefore, it can only lose about 7 to 10% of your body heat. Heat loss is actually proportional to whatever skin is exposed. If you're out in the cold with bare arms, you'll lose just as much heat through your arms as you would through your uncovered head. Your head might feel colder, and that's because it has a lot of blood vessels close to the surface, making it more sensitive to temperature changes. But scientifically, you're not losing significantly more heat there compared to any other exposed body part. The only time this advice holds significant weight is for babies and very young children. Their heads are proportionally much larger compared to their smaller bodies, meaning they do lose a greater percentage of heat through their heads. So for infants, a hat is crucial. But for adults, while a hat is cozy and prevents discomfort, it's not some magical heat-saving device. Your arms, legs, and torso are all equally important in retaining warmth. Now, let's talk about some truly surprising intelligence.
Number 9. Goldfish memory. The myth of the 3-second brain. Ah, the humble goldfish. The go-to example for anything forgetful. You have the memory of a goldfish, we scoff, implying a brain so tiny and inefficient it can barely remember what it had for breakfast. The widely accepted wisdom? Goldfish have a pathetic 3-second memory. Well, prepare to have your perception of these aquatic companions completely flipped, because this is another myth that's totally, utterly, hilariously wrong.
These shimmering little swimmers are actually far smarter than you think. Forget 3 seconds, these fish are practically aquatic Einsteins. Scientists, in their infinite wisdom, have put goldfish through rigorous tests. They've placed them in mazes, and not only do these fish solve them, but they remember the solution months later. That's right, months. Your goldfish probably remembers that time you forgot to feed it last Tuesday. And it gets better. Goldfish can even recognize faces. Imagine being a goldfish, swimming around your bowl and thinking, "Oh, look, it's Dave again, with the food. He's always late." They can distinguish between different people. Some dedicated goldfish trainers have even taught them to do tricks, swimming through hoops, pushing tiny soccer balls, even ringing bells for food. Perhaps most astonishingly, some goldfish have learned to tell different pieces of music apart. They can be conditioned to respond differently to classical versus rock, for example. And they can achieve all this with a brain smaller than a pea. Scientists are actually studying goldfish brains to better understand human memory. So, next time you see a goldfish, give it some respect. It's probably judging your memory, not the other way around. Finally, let's tackle a sticky situation. Number 10. Gum doesn't stick around for years. The chewy urban legend. We've all heard the terrifying tale. Swallow a piece of chewing gum and it'll sit in your stomach for 7 long, agonizing years, slowly turning into a sticky, indigestible blob, wreaking havoc on your insides. It's the kind of story that made every kid meticulously wrap their chewed gum in a napkin, even if it meant a sticky finger or two. Well, I'm here to tell you to chew on this. It's a complete and utter lie. When you accidentally or intentionally swallow gum, it travels through your digestive system just like any other food you eat. The only real difference is that your body can't actually break it down and absorb it. Think of chewing gum like corn kernels. You eat them, you enjoy them, and then, well, they just pass right through, looking pretty much the same on the other end. Most swallowed gum is out of your system within a day or 2, maybe 3 at most. It doesn't stick to your insides like some kind of internal superglue. Your stomach is a constantly churning, highly acidic environment designed to push things along. And those horror stories about gum causing blockages or problems, unless you're swallowing massive amounts of gum constantly, like a pack a day, you're probably going to be just fine. Humans have actually been chewing random stuff for thousands of years. Ancient Greeks chewed tree resin, Mayans chewed chicle, the natural base for many modern gums. None of them died from 7 years of gum buildup. The only place gum truly sticks around for years is on sidewalks, stubbornly clinging to the pavement. So, next time you accidentally swallow your gum, don't panic. Your digestive system is a well-oiled machine, and it'll handle it. Thanks for watching Cool Dude Explains, where comedy meets curiosity. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your favorite myth or question in the comments. Stay curious, stay cool, and I'll see you in the next video.